all these vertically so that we can see both drawings. And go to the Model tab on both of them, then it makes it easier to work. It is very common for us to take objects from one drawing to another. Why recreate a pod when you've already got one drawn? And a lot of times, if you're like me, I can't remember exactly where I saved that block, but I do know I used it in this drawing. So we're going to focus on one drawing at a time. Now, you can click on an object, right-click, and go to your clipboard commands. I prefer the shortcuts. I like a Control-C, Control-V, Control-X for cut, copy, and paste. Later on, we'll talk about copy with base point, which is Control-Shift-C. I have a hard time remembering that, but the other basic ones you should know from using Windows. Control-C, Control-V, and so forth. So to copy it to your clipboard, you just do a Control-C. Now to paste it, you do a Control-V. Now whenever you paste your objects, your cursor will always be in the lower left extent of the objects. So if I pick these two objects, do a Control-C, and then a Control-V, you'll notice where my cursor is at, lower left corner. You really have no control over that. Once your objects are in your clipboard, you can copy and paste them between drawings. So I can come over here to this drawing, do a Control-V, and paste it. Now what you have to worry about is if you have blocks with the same name, but they look differently. Let me see what this block looks like. What's the name of it? Chair Desk-20. That's a workable name. All right, let me see what this chair looks like. Chair, I like chair. Okay. I'm going to rename this block just to show you. See, I think this drawing was created by another program and imported into AutoCAD because chair desk 13, 20, 30, they're all the same chair. It's a very poor example, so I'm going to rename that to chair. Okay. So if I take this chair and I do a Control-C, Control-V, it makes copies of it. Now if I come over here to this drawing and do a Control-V, I get that chair. That freaks people out. How can I take a curved chair and all of a sudden now I'm pasting a square chair? It's the name of the blocks. Sometimes the names conflict. You know, I see this happen all the time with doors. Someone created a block called door and it was a left-handed door, and in another drawing someone created a right-handed door. And now all of a sudden all of their doors flip because they inserted it into another drawing. So naming of blocks is very important. Now this is really what freaks people out, is when they do a drag and drop and boom, it changes. But yeah, so watch out for naming of your block. So you can do a copy and paste inside of a drawing, you can copy and paste in another drawing, and you can also copy and paste in other applications like PowerPoint, Word, and things like that. Now, let's say that you wanted to control the insertion point of a block or a copy and paste. Let's say that I wanted to copy this bathroom stall and the toilets and put it in another closet, but I want to use this corner as my base point. That's where this tool, Copy with Base Point, comes in. Copy with Base Point allows you to pick the insertion point. It doesn't default to that lower left corner. So I do Copy with Base Point, pick that corner. So now when I go in and paste it, I'm going to paste it outside or in this corner. So when I do a Control-V, I can snap to that corner. It gives you a lot more control over the insertion of that block. See if I've got any square corners. Yeah, we can have a bathroom up here. So it gives you a little more control. If I'm not concerned about the insertion point, copy and paste all the way. Then if you need a little more accuracy, copy with base point. All right, let's talk about something that I just demonstrated, drag and drop. Your book talks about it later, but I think it's something you need to be aware of. Let me show you how you do drag and drop. Click on an object, hold your left mouse button down on the object, not the blue grip. I can move it. You can select multiple objects, hold your mouse down and drag it. You can also drag it across drawings. So if I take these pedestals, I can drag and drop them across drawings. Those must be some large pedestals. I tend to use drag and drop probably more than copy and paste, just because to me it's faster. Now, if you're if you're dragging and dropping text, you have to pick the edge of the text, not in the center, where it's a solid color. You have to pick right on the edge. Now, with drag and drop, you can also make copies. So if I do a drag, come down here and press my control key, you can see that little plus sign on my cursor. That means I'm making a copy. But you need to start dragging first, then press control, and you're making copies. Now, when you're dragging and dropping across drawings, it's automatically a copy. I use this feature all the time. I tell my students it's a free-form drag and drop. You don't really care about precision. I just need another copy. And you're not really worried about accuracy. And I use them all. I use copy and paste, drag and drop, move, copy, whatever I need at the time. On page 2131, match properties. We had talked about match properties before, but match properties works across drawings. So I can click on match properties, click on this magenta line in this drawing, and then come over to this drawing and apply it to those objects. So this is one of the few tools that actually works between two drawings. And all you're doing is modifying the properties of those objects. Now, if the layer doesn't exist, it creates it. See, that's on layer furniture. I'm going to move it to layer area. If I do match properties. The way the blocks were created, they don't change the color. It tells me it's on area, but it's still, the color matches the layer that it was drawn on. Page 2141. Additional layer tools. I did skip the section on grips because we kind of already covered that. Up on your ribbon, on your layer panel, you have all of these tools that allows you to control layers. For example, I can turn a layer off, freeze it, lock it, all by clicking on an object. So if I want to freeze the chair layer, whatever layer this is on, I can freeze that. Apparently I moved it to the area layer. So if I want to freeze the wall layer, I could do that. And you have thaw all layers. You have all layers on. Ew, that doesn't look good. When I do that. you have a tool called Make Current. See, I'm currently on the dimension layer, so Make Current allows me to click on an object and make that layer the current layer. This comes in handy when you're working on a project where you didn't really draw it, you're not for sure exactly what layer it's on. Used to, I'd hover over on an object, find out what layer it's on, then go up there and set layer doors. But now you can just click on it. Here's a tool called Layer Isolate. Layer Isolate can do two things. It can turn layers off and fade them, or it basically not turns it off, it locks them. So if I do Layer Isolate, go down to my command line, you'll notice it says select objects to isolate and then settings. You can either lock and fade them, or you can turn them off. The default is lock and fade. So if I isolate, this layer, it's going to basically fade everything else. So this is another way to get objects to stand out or emphasize objects. Now there is a layer unisolate that allows you to undo that.
So everything you locked and faded is locked, and you can't delete it.
Right. Because that's where the fading comes in. That's part of the locking mechanism. And you'll notice here that there is a locked fading level that you can adjust. Some people like that. A lot of times what I do is I just like to freeze them. Just get them out of the way. So it really depends on your need on those. Also, there's, and we'll get into some of these other tools later, but we'll get into layer states, and then there's some other features like layer previous, change to current layer, that's a pretty neat tool. Copy object to new layer, so you can move objects to a completely new layer. Layer walk, I like to use layer walk to determine what layer objects are on. On page 2146, your book talks about that. Let me explain layer walk. Layer walk will give you a little menu of every layer in your drawing, and you can click on the layer name and it will show you what objects are on those layers. And I'm just using my arrow key so I can come through here and see how this drawing was created. And it helps me identify objects that are on the wrong layer. Now you can hold down your control key and select multiple layers. And then you can close it. Now with the layer isolate, let's say that I click on hatching, uncheck restore on exit, and close, it will actually just leave it at that state. So you may want to go in and modify it and then go back and turn it all on. And it actually turns your layers off when you do that. So, but anytime I'm working on a new drawing that I didn't create, I always do this because I want to see how screwed up it is.
So these are like shortcuts to the layer properties menu?
Yeah, really what it's doing, yeah, it's basically going through layer properties